Marcus Webb hadn't cried in 8 years, not since he buried his wife Rebecca and 3-year-old daughter Lily in the frozen Texas ground on that February morning when the world stopped making sense. He'd stood over those twin graves, hat in his hands, and felt something inside him shut down like a door slamming closed. The other rangers had clapped him on the shoulder, told him time would heal it, offered whiskey and empty words. He'd thanked them and ridden away from the cemetery without looking back. 8 years of silence followed. 8 years of riding fence lines alone, speaking only when necessary, building walls so high around his heart that nothing could reach him anymore. The winter of 1887 hit Riverside, Texas harder than anyone could remember. Marcus rode his buckskin gelding Thunder along the frozen fence line of the old Henderson property, his breath forming clouds in the December air that cut through 2 layers of wool like they were paper. At 43, his body still moved with the efficiency of his ranger years, but something essential had gone out of him. He was a man going through motions, waiting for a life that had already ended to finally catch up with his body. Thunder snorted and pulled against the reins. The horse's ears flicked forward, then back, hooves dancing on ground so frozen it rang like iron. "Easy, boy." Marcus patted the horse's neck, but Thunder wouldn't settle. The gelding had been with him for 6 years and knew the patrol route better than most people knew their own homes. Something was wrong. Then he heard it. A sound so faint it might have been the wind, except the wind had died down to nothing. A cry, weak and desperate, coming from Miller's Creek a quarter-mile east. Every instinct from his ranger days sparked to life. Marcus kicked Thunder into motion and rode hard toward the sound. Miller's Creek ran shallow this time of year, half frozen along the edges where ice grabbed at the banks like skeletal fingers. The water moved sluggish and dark beneath a skim of frost. There, caught against a fallen cottonwood branch, was a burlap sack, the kind used for feed corn. It was moving. Marcus was off his horse before Thunder fully stopped. The icy water soaked through his boots as he waded in, heart pounding against his ribs in a way it hadn't in years. He'd seen things in his ranger days that haunted his sleep. Dead men, dying men, things that made him question whether God was watching at all. But nothing prepared him for what he found inside that sack. A baby, a little girl maybe 8 or 9 months old. Her lips were blue, her skin was gray, her tiny body shook with cold, so violent he thought for a terrible moment he was already too late. The words tore from his throat before he could stop them. "Dear God." The baby's eyes fluttered open. They were blue, pale blue, like a winter sky. She looked up at Marcus's lined face and her cracked lips moved. "Mama." The word hit him like a bullet. His hands shook as he lifted her from the sack. She weighed almost nothing. Her dress was soaked through, thin cotton that offered no protection against the cold that had already stolen the color from her skin. Someone had put this child in a feed sack and thrown her in the creek to die. Someone had decided this tiny life was disposable as garbage. "Hold on, little one." His voice fractured in a way it hadn't since Rebecca's funeral. "You hold on." He pressed her against his chest inside his coat, trying to share whatever warmth his body could give. She was so cold. Too cold. Her breathing was shallow, barely there, a whisper of life that might stop any second. Thunder stood steady as Marcus mounted with one hand, the other keeping the baby pressed tight against him. He'd ridden fast before, chasing outlaws across the Llano Estacado, escaping ambushes in the Davis Mountains. But he'd never ridden like this, like death itself was racing alongside them, reaching out with frozen fingers to claim this child he didn't know, but somehow couldn't lose. The town was 3 miles away, 3 miles of frozen ground and bitter wind that cut through his coat and found the child pressed against him. Marcus bent low over Thunder's neck and whispered prayers he hadn't spoken in 8 years. Prayers that felt rusty and awkward in his mouth, but came anyway because this moment demanded something more than silence. "Don't you die on me. You hear me? Don't you dare die." The baby's tiny fist gripped his shirt, holding on, fighting. And something in Marcus's chest, something he'd thought had died with Lily and Rebecca, began to crack open. Dr. James Mitchell was finishing his morning coffee when his door burst open hard enough to make the frame shudder. Marcus Webb stood there, wild-eyed and desperate, clutching something inside his coat. Mitchell had known Marcus for 12 years. Since before the tragedy that had turned the man into a ghost of himself, he'd never seen him like this. "Doc, I need help, now." Marcus's voice carried an edge of panic that made Mitchell's training take over before questions could form. He swept everything off his examination table with one arm, instruments and papers scattering to the floor. "Put her down. Careful now." The baby whimpered as Marcus laid her on the table. Her eyes opened again, searching, confused. When she saw Marcus step back, she reached for him with trembling hands that could barely complete the gesture. "Mama." The word came out of a whisper that seemed to carry all the loneliness in the world. "I'm here." Marcus grabbed her tiny hand in his. "I'm right here." Mitchell worked fast. He delivered babies in blizzards, treated gunshot wounds on dusty roads, saved men who should have died a dozen times over. But this child was barely hanging on. Her body temperature was dangerously low. Her pulse was weak and thready. Her breathing came in shallow gasps that might stop any moment. "She's hypothermic. Body temperature is critically low." Mitchell wrapped her in warm blankets, checking her pulse, her breathing, every sign that might tell him whether they'd reached her in time. How long was she in that water? "Don't know. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. It's a miracle she's alive at all." Marcus stared at the baby's face, her matted blonde hair, her blue eyes that kept finding him in the room even as Mitchell worked. "Who does this, Doc? What kind of monster throws a baby away like garbage?" Mitchell shook his head. He'd seen evil in his 47 years. He'd seen what people could do when desperation or cruelty or madness took hold. But this, he couldn't find words. The baby's breathing was getting stronger now that she was warming up, but she refused to let go of Marcus's finger. Every time he tried to pull away, she'd cry. Weak, heartbreaking cries that cut right through him. She needs constant care, feeding every 2 hours, someone watching her around the clock. Mitchell looked at Marcus with concern that bordered on pity. "You can't do this alone. I ain't leaving her. I'm not asking you to, but you need help, someone who knows how to care for infants." The door opened again. Sarah Brennan stepped inside, her dark hair pulled back, her wool coat dusted with snow. She'd been walking past when she heard the commotion. The whole town probably heard Marcus's horse racing down Main Street like demons were chasing him. "Dr. Mitchell, is everything—" She stopped. Her eyes found the baby on the table and all the color drained from her face. For a moment she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at this child who looked so small and helpless and alive. Oh my God. Sarah hadn't held a baby in 4 years. Not since her son Samuel died in her arms at 6 months old. 3 weeks after her husband William was killed in the mine collapse. She'd sworn she would never hold another child again. The pain was too much. The risk was too great. The memory of Samuel's last breath against her neck still woke her some nights, gasping and crying in the darkness of her empty house. But when that baby looked at her, when those pale blue eyes met hers, something shifted in Sarah's chest. Something she'd thought was dead stirred to life. What happened to her? Her voice came out as a whisper because anything louder might shatter the moment. Someone left her to die. Marcus's voice was rough with anger he'd forgotten he could feel. Creeks freezing. She was in a feed sack. Sarah moved closer without meaning to. The baby was watching her now, tracking her every movement with those enormous eyes. "Sarah." Mitchell spoke gently, the way you speak to someone standing on a ledge. "I need your help. This child needs round-the-clock care. I can't do it alone." And Marcus, he gestured at the former ranger who looked like he might collapse from exhaustion and adrenaline crash. "I can handle it," Marcus interrupted, but Mitchell shook his head. "You haven't slept in 3 days. I can see it in your face. You're running on nothing but stubbornness right now." He turned back to Sarah. "You're the only woman in this town I trust with something this delicate. Will you help?" Sarah's hands trembled. Every instinct told her to run, to protect her heart from breaking again, to keep the walls she'd built so carefully intact. But the baby reached out toward her, one tiny hand stretching through the air, and made a soft cooing sound. "Please," the gesture seemed to say, "please don't leave me. I'll help." The words came out before Sarah could stop them, before the fear could take over, before the memory of Samuel's weight in her arms could paralyze her. Mitchell placed the baby in her arms carefully, as if transferring something infinitely precious. The child, who had been restless and whimpering, immediately calmed. Her tiny fingers wrapped around a strand of Sarah's dark hair, and she sighed, a soft, contented sound that broke Sarah's heart in the best possible way. "She likes you," Marcus said it quietly, watching something pass between Sarah and the baby that he didn't fully understand but recognized as important. Sarah couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down her face, and she didn't even try to wipe them away. This child felt right in her arms, like something that had been missing had finally come home. They set up in the back room of Dr. Mitchell's office. It wasn't much. A small bed, a rocking chair, a stove to keep the room warm. But it was enough. Marcus refused to leave, sleeping in a chair by the door when exhaustion finally claimed him. The first night was the hardest. The baby woke every hour, crying for food, for warmth, for comfort. Sarah and Marcus took turns, stumbling through the darkness, learning as they went. "You're holding the bottle wrong." Sarah adjusted Marcus's grip in the dim lamplight. "Tilt it up a little. She'll swallow less air." Marcus followed her instructions, watching in wonder as the baby drank. She was getting stronger. He could see it in the way she gripped the bottle, the way her eyes focused on his face. She's a fighter. Look at her go. Had to be, to survive what someone did to her. They didn't talk much those first days, just worked side by side, focused on keeping this tiny life alive. But something was building between them, a connection forged in sleepless nights and shared purpose. On the third morning, the baby smiled. It was just a small upturn of her lips, but it transformed her whole face. She was looking at Sarah, reaching up to touch her cheek when the smile appeared. "Did you see that?" she smiled. Sarah's voice caught with emotion she'd been holding back for days. Marcus moved closer, and the baby turned to look at him too. Her smile widened, and she made a babbling sound that might have been laughter. "She needs a name. We can't keep calling her the baby." Sarah said it softly, testing in the words. Marcus studied the child's face. She should have died in that creek. Any other baby would have. But she held on. She fought. "Hope," Sarah whispered. "It's a miracle she's alive. By the grace of God." Marcus nodded slowly. The name felt right, like something clicking into place. "Hope. I like that." The baby, Hope, seemed to respond to the name. She turned her head when they called her, babbled happily when she heard it. "Hope it is." For the first time in 8 years, Marcus smiled. Not the polite grimace he gave people in town. A real smile that reached his eyes and reminded him what it felt like to be human. Sheriff Raymond Cole arrived on the fourth day with news that made Marcus's blood run cold. The sheriff stood in the doorway, hat in his hands, looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Someone's been asking about a missing baby." Cole was 42, with a face weathered by sun and responsibility. He'd known Marcus since the Ranger days. They'd ridden together on 3 separate manhunts. Cole was a good man trapped in a bad position. "Who? Don't know for sure. But Mayor Ashford's assistant came by my office yesterday, said it was a family matter that needed to be handled quietly." The mention of Ashford's name made Marcus's jaw tighten. Judge William Ashford wasn't just the mayor. He was the richest, most powerful man in 3 counties. He owned the bank, the largest ranch, and half the businesses in town. When Ashford wanted something, he got it. And God help anyone who stood in his way. "What did you tell him?" "Told him I hadn't heard anything about a missing baby." Cole shrugged, but there was steel in his voice. "Wasn't lying. Hope wasn't missing. She was abandoned." "They're not getting her back." Sarah's voice was fierce. She stood with Hope in her arms, her whole body tense with protective fury. "Whoever threw her in that creek, they're not touching her again." "Easy," Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet. I know enough. Someone tried to kill this child, and now they're looking for her because they're scared." Sarah looked down at Hope, who was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger circling. "They should be scared." Cole cleared his throat. "There's something else. You two living here together, taking care of this baby." "Folks are starting to talk. Let them talk." Marcus's voice was flat. "I'm just saying, you know how this town is. An unmarried man and woman raising a child together. It ain't proper. Some people think it's sweet. Others," he trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. "Others can mind their own business." Sarah lifted her chin. She'd faced down the gossips when William died, when she'd lost Samuel. She wasn't afraid of them now. I agree with you, ma'am, but if Ashford gets involved, he'll use every weapon he's got, including your reputation. After Cole left, Marcus and Sarah sat in heavy silence. Hope slept between them, unaware that her future hung in the balance. He's right, this town loves to gossip, and Ashford loves to use gossip against people. I don't care what people say about me. Neither do I. But Hope, Sarah stroked the baby's soft hair, if they use our improper arrangement to take her away, they won't. Marcus's voice was firm. I won't let them. Sarah looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since they'd started this journey together. His face was weathered, lined with years of hard living and harder losses, but his eyes were kind. And when he looked at Hope, she saw something she recognized. The fierce, protective love of a parent who'd lost everything once and refused to lose it again. Why? Why do you care so much? You barely know her. Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. I had a daughter once, Lily. She was 3 years old when she died. Fever took her and my wife Rebecca in the same week. He swallowed hard. I wasn't there. I was out chasing outlaws, being a Texas Ranger, thinking I was doing something important. By the time I got home, they were already in the ground. Marcus, I've spent 8 years blaming myself, building walls, keeping everyone out because I couldn't stand to lose anyone else. He looked at Hope and his eyes shone with unshed tears. But when I pulled her from that creek, when she grabbed my finger and called me Mama, something broke open inside me. Something I thought was dead. Sarah reached across and took his hand. I understand. I know you do. Doc told me about your husband, your son. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. We're both broken, aren't we? Both carrying grief too heavy to put down. Maybe. But maybe Hope didn't come to us by accident. Maybe we're exactly what she needs. She hesitated. And maybe she's exactly what we need too. Hope stirred in her sleep, making a soft sound. Both adults turned to look at her, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Whatever came next, whoever was looking for this baby, they would face it together. The gossip spread through Riverside like wildfire. By the end of the week, everyone knew about the cowboy who'd pulled a dying baby from Miller's Creek, and everyone had an opinion. Martha Dawson whispered to her husband at the general store, her voice carrying the practiced judgment of a woman who had spent 60 years perfecting it. It ain't right, an unmarried man and woman living together raising a child that ain't theirs. What kind of example does that set? Her husband Henry looked up from the inventory ledger with tired eyes, the kind where a baby gets to live instead of die. Martha clicked her tongue and shook her head, but Henry went back to his numbers without waiting for her response. Some arguments weren't worth having. Sarah felt the stares every time she walked through town, the whispers that stopped when she got close, the turned backs and cold shoulders from women who used to smile at her. They're talking about us again. She stood at the window of Dr. Mitchell's office, watching two women hurry past with their heads bent together. Let them talk. Marcus didn't look up from where he was feeding Hope. The baby had finished her bottle and was playing with the buttons on his shirt, babbling happily. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they're calling a fallen woman. Anyone says that to your face, you send them to me. Sarah turned to look at him, this rough, weathered cowboy, so gentle with the baby in his arms. Hope had finished eating and was reaching for his face with chubby fingers, patting his weathered cheek. She's getting stronger every day. She's a fighter. Marcus lifted Hope to his shoulder and patted her back. Ain't you, little one? Hope burped loudly and giggled. Both adults laughed, and for a moment, the weight of the world seemed lighter. Then the door opened, and everything changed. Dr. Mitchell stepped inside, his face pale. We have a problem. Judge Ashford is here. He's brought lawyers from Dallas. Marcus grabbed his hat. Watch Hope. I'm going to that meeting. Sarah caught his arm. Marcus, wait. If you go in there angry, you'll play right into his hands. He wants you to lose your temper. He wants you to give him a reason to have you arrested. So what am I supposed to do? Sit here while he steals our daughter? The word hung in the air between them. Our daughter. Neither of them had said it out loud before. Sarah's grip on his arm tightened. We go together. We stay calm. And we don't give in anything he can use against us. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Together. Dr. Mitchell cleared his throat. I'll stay with Hope. But be careful, both of you. Ashford didn't get where he is by playing fair. The town hall was packed when they arrived. It seemed like half of Riverside had turned out to see what would happen. Marcus spotted Sheriff Cole near the door, looking uncomfortable. The sheriff nodded at him but didn't smile. At the front of the room, Judge William Ashford sat behind a table like he owned the place, which, Marcus reminded himself, he basically did. The man was in his late 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, dressed in a suit that cost more than most folks earned in a year. Beside him sat two lawyers from Dallas, their faces smooth and expressionless. Professional masks that revealed nothing. And next to them, a young woman Marcus didn't recognize. She was thin and pale, with golden blonde hair and blue eyes that looked too big for her face. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, and she kept her gaze fixed on the floor. There was something broken about her, something that made Marcus think of a bird with clipped wings. Ah, Mr. Webb. Ashford's voice carried through the room, smooth as honey over poison. So good of you to join us. And Miss Brennan as well. Please have a seat. I'll stand. Suit yourself. Ashford shuffled some papers with deliberate slowness, making everyone wait. I'll get straight to the point. The infant you've been harboring belongs to my family. My daughter Victoria gave birth to her several months ago, and the child was stolen from us by a disgruntled former employee. That's not true. Sarah's voice rang out clear and strong. That baby was found in Miller's Creek, tied up in a feed sack and left to die. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People shifted in their seats, looking between Sarah and Ashford with uncertain faces. Ashford's jaw tightened, but his smile never wavered. Miss Brennan, I understand you've become attached to the child. That's only natural. But the law is clear. Family rights supersede any temporary arrangements. Victoria is the baby's mother, and she has every right to reclaim her daughter. Then why didn't she? Marcus stepped forward. If that baby was stolen, why didn't Victoria report it? Why didn't anyone in your family go to the sheriff? We were trying to handle the matter privately. To avoid scandal. To avoid scandal. Marcus's voice was flat. A baby was missing. And you were worried about scandal. Victoria finally looked up. Her eyes met Marcus's, and he saw something there that made his stomach clench. Fear. Not of him, of her father. Mr. Webb. Ashford's tone hardened. I'm offering you a chance to do the right thing here. Return the child to her rightful family, and we'll forget this whole unfortunate incident. And if I don't, then I'll be forced to take legal action. And believe me, you do not want to go up against my lawyers in court. Sarah moved to stand beside Marcus. We're not afraid of your lawyers. You should be, Miss Brennan. I've ruined people far more powerful than a school teacher and a washed-up cowboy. Ashford smiled, but his eyes were cold. I'm giving you 3 days. 3 days to hand over the child. After that, I'll have the sheriff remove her by force if necessary. The hell you will. Marcus's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. Sheriff Cole stepped forward, placing himself between Marcus and Ashford. Everybody calm down. This ain't the place for... This is exactly the place. Marcus didn't take his eyes off Ashford. You want to take a baby from people who love her and give her back to a man who ordered her death? That's what this is really about, isn't it? The room went dead silent. Ashford's face turned red. That is a vicious lie, is it? Marcus looked at Victoria. Tell them. Tell them what really happened to your baby. Victoria's lips trembled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She opened her mouth to speak, but her father grabbed her arm. Charlotte has been through enough. Ashford's grip on his daughter tightened until she winced. She doesn't need to be interrogated by the man who's holding her child hostage. She's not the one holding anyone hostage. Sarah's voice shook with anger. Look at her. She's terrified of you. How dare you? I dare because I know the truth. Sarah stepped forward, her chin raised. I taught Victoria when she was in school. I know what kind of man you are. I know what you did to her when she disappointed you. Victoria let out a small sob. Her father's face went from red to white. This meeting is over. Ashford stood abruptly, pulling Victoria up with him. 3 days, Webb. 3 days or I'll destroy everything you care about. He swept out of the room, dragging his daughter behind him. Victoria looked back once, her eyes meeting Sarah's with desperate pleading. Help me, those eyes said. Please help me. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with whispered speculation. Marcus stood motionless, his hands clenched at his sides. Marcus, Sarah touched his arm. We need to go. We need to make a plan. He's going to take her. Marcus's voice was hollow. He's got money, power, lawyers. What do we have? We have each other. We have the truth. And we have 3 days to figure out how to fight back. They walked back to Dr. Mitchell's office in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, they found the doctor pacing the floor with Hope in his arms. What happened? I heard shouting. Ashford's given us 3 days. Sarah took Hope from him, holding the baby close. After that, he's coming for her. 3 days isn't enough time to... It'll have to be. Marcus pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. We need to find Frank Dixon, the man Ashford paid to do what he did. If we can get him to testify, he'll never talk. Mitchell shook his head. Dixon's a drunk, but he's not stupid. He knows what Ashford will do to him if he opens his mouth. Then we make him understand what we'll do to him if he doesn't. Marcus, Sarah's voice was sharp, threatening a witness won't help our case. I wasn't going to threaten him. I was going to appeal to whatever conscience he's got left. Marcus took a deep breath. A man who couldn't bring himself to kill a baby, there's still something human in him. Something we can reach. Hope began to fuss, picking up on the tension in the room. Sarah rocked her gently, humming a lullaby that always calmed her down. There's something else we need to do. Sarah's voice was quiet but determined. We need to talk to Victoria. How? Her father's got her locked up tighter than Fort Knox. She goes to church every Sunday morning. Ashford makes the whole family attend, to keep up appearances. Sarah looked at Marcus. I can get to her there. Woman to woman. She deserves to know her baby is alive. That's risky. Everything we do from now on is risky. But Victoria isn't our enemy. She's another one of his victims. That night, after Hope was asleep, Marcus couldn't settle. He paced the small room, his mind racing through every possible scenario. Sarah watched him from the rocking chair, her own thoughts troubled. Tell me about your wife. The question came out soft, almost hesitant. About Rebecca. Marcus stopped pacing. He was quiet for so long Sarah thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice rough with old grief. She was the kindest woman I ever knew, saw the good in everyone, even when there wasn't much good to see. She used to say I was too hard on myself, that I carried the weight of the world when I didn't have to. She sounds wonderful. She was. Marcus stared into the dying fire. When she got sick, I wasn't there. I was 3 days' ride away, chasing a gang of rustlers through the Guadalupe Mountains. By the time I got word and made it home, she was already gone. Lily, too. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? He looked at her with eyes full of pain. I chose the job over my family. I told myself I was doing something important. Keeping people safe. But the people I should have been protecting were dying without me. You couldn't have known, no, but I could have been there. I could have held my wife's hand while she passed. I could have said goodbye to my little girl. His voice broke. Instead, I came home to 2 graves and an empty house. Sarah stood and moved to him, taking his hands in hers. I know what it's like to blame yourself for something you couldn't control. Your husband, your son. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. William was working in the mine when it collapsed. I'd begged him not to go that day. I had a feeling, this terrible feeling that something was wrong. But he laughed and kissed me and said he'd be home for supper. She paused, the memory still sharp after 4 years. He never came home, no. And 3 weeks later, Samuel got whooping cough. I did everything I could, stayed up all night, held him, prayed. Her voice faded to a whisper. He died in my arms, 6 months old. And I thought if I'd just prayed harder, if I'd been a better mother. Stop. Marcus turned to face her, gripping both her hands. You listen to me, Sarah Brennan. What happened to your son wasn't your fault. You loved that boy with everything you had. Sometimes love isn't enough to stop death. But that doesn't make it your fault. Then why does it feel like it is? Because that's what grief does. It makes us think we could have changed things, that if we just done something different. He shook his head. I've spent 8 years drowning in that kind of thinking. It doesn't help. It just keeps you stuck in the past while life moves on without you. When did you get so wise? About 5 minutes ago, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. Turns out it's easier to see the truth when you're talking about someone else's pain instead of your own. They stood together in silence, hands still clasped. The fire crackled softly. Somewhere in the other room, Hope made a small sound in her sleep. I'm scared, Sarah finally admitted. Not for me, for her. If Ashford takes her back, he won't. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise you this. Whatever happens, I'll fight for her with everything I've got. He paused. And I'll fight for you too. Why? The question came out before she could stop it. You barely know me. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because when I look at you, I see someone who understands. Someone who's walked through the fire and come out the other side. And because, he hesitated, because for the first time in 8 years, I don't feel alone. Sarah felt something shift in her chest, something warm and frightening and wonderful. I don't feel alone either. They stayed like that until the fire died down to embers, neither one willing to break the spell. Outside, the wind howled and the first snowflakes of a new storm began to fall. Sunday morning came cold and gray. Sarah dressed carefully, choosing her best dress and pinning her hair up with more care than usual. She needed to look respectable, trustworthy, not like a woman who'd been living in sin with a man for the past week. Marcus watched her prepare with troubled eyes. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Victoria deserves to know the truth. Sarah turned to face him. If it was Lily, if someone had saved her and you didn't know, wouldn't you want to be told? The question hit home. Marcus nodded slowly. Be careful. Ashford's got eyes everywhere. I will. The small white church sat on the edge of town, its steeple pointing toward a sky heavy with unspent snow. Sarah slipped inside an hour before service, her heart pounding. The church was empty except for one figure in the front pew. Victoria Ashford sat alone, her head bowed in prayer. She startled when Sarah sat down beside her. Miss Brennan? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. You shouldn't be here. If my father sees you, your father isn't here yet, and there's something you need to know. Victoria's eyes widened with fear. Please, I can't help you. I want to, but your baby is alive. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She went white, then red, then white again. Her hands flew to her mouth. What? She's alive, Victoria. She's healthy and beautiful, and she's got your eyes. Sarah took the girl's trembling hands. Your father lied to you. The baby didn't die in childbirth. He paid a man to get rid of her, but the man couldn't do it. He put her in the creek, and she survived. Marcus found her and saved her life. Victoria was shaking so hard she could barely speak. My baby, my Emma. We've been calling her Hope, but if you want to name her Emma, Hope. Victoria whispered the name like a prayer. Hope is perfect. She's really alive. She's waiting for you, Victoria. She's the most beautiful little girl I've ever seen. Victoria broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. Sarah held her, letting her cry, understanding that these were tears of joy and grief and rage all mixed together. He told me she died. Victoria's voice shook with fury. He held me while I cried. He watched me grieve for months while my baby was alive. She looked up at Sarah with fire in her eyes. I want to see her. I want to hold her. You can, but Victoria, your father is fighting to get her back. He's threatening to take her from us by force. He doesn't want her. He wants to control her, just like he controls everything else. Victoria wiped her tears angrily. I won't let him have her. I won't let him hurt her the way he's hurt me. Then help us. Stand up to him. Tell the truth about what he did. Victoria's courage flickered but didn't die. He'll destroy me. He'll cut me off without a penny. He'll tell everyone I'm a liar and a fallen woman. Maybe. But you'll have your daughter, and you'll have people who believe you. Sarah squeezed her hands. You'll have us. Why would you help me? I'm the reason your baby was almost killed. No, your father is the reason. You're a victim too, Victoria. And it's time to stop being a victim and start being a mother. Victoria stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in her face, something hardened. What do I need to do? Meet us tonight, Dr. Mitchell's office after dark. Your father won't know. Sarah paused. And Victoria, be ready. What happens next won't be easy, but I promise you it'll be worth it. Victoria nodded, wiping the last of her tears. I'll be there. She hesitated. Miss Brennan, the man who found her, the cowboy, Marcus Webb. Her voice trembled. Does he love her? Sarah thought about Marcus's face when he looked at Hope, the way his whole being softened, the way he'd held her through the night when she was sick, singing off-key lullabies until she fell asleep. Yes, he loves her like she's his own. Fresh tears slipped down Victoria's cheeks, but she was smiling. Then she's lucky, luckier than I ever was. While Sarah was at church, Marcus rode out to find Frank Dixon. The man lived in a rundown shack on the edge of town, surviving on odd jobs and whiskey. When Marcus knocked on the door, it took several minutes before Dixon answered. He was exactly what Marcus expected. Thin, unshaven, with the shaking hands and bloodshot eyes of a man who'd made friends with the bottle. When he saw Marcus, the color drained from his face. I ain't talking to you. Yes, you are. Marcus pushed past him into the shack. We can do this easy, or we can do this hard. Your choice. Look, I don't know nothing about. I know what you did. Marcus's voice was ice. I know Ashford paid you to kill a baby. I know you couldn't do it, so you threw her in the creek instead and told yourself that made it better. Dixon's face crumpled. I never wanted to hurt nobody. I just needed the money. My wife's sick, and the medicine costs. Save it. Marcus grabbed the man by his shirt collar. That baby almost died. She was blue, frozen, barely breathing. And you left her there. I know. Tears streamed down Dixon's careworn face. You think I don't know? I hear her crying every night. I see that little face every time I close my eyes. I'm going to hell for what I did. Maybe. Marcus released him. Or maybe you can make it right. How? How can I ever make something like that right? By telling the truth, by testifying about what Ashford paid you to do. Dixon shook his head frantically. I can't. He'll kill me. You don't know what he's capable of. I know exactly what he's capable of. I pulled a dying baby from a frozen creek. Remember? Marcus stepped closer. Here's what I know about you, Frank Dixon. You're weak. You're scared. You made a terrible choice because you were desperate. But somewhere inside that miserable shell, there's still a man who couldn't bring himself to kill an innocent child. Dixon was sobbing now, his whole body shaking. You've got a chance to make this right. One chance. Help me stop Ashford. And maybe, just maybe, you can look at yourself in the mirror again someday. And if I don't, Marcus's eyes hardened. Then I'll make sure everyone in this territory knows what you did. Your wife, your neighbors, every person you've ever met. You'll spend the rest of your miserable life known as the man who threw a baby in a creek to die. Dixon stared at him with red-rimmed eyes. The silence stretched between them, broken only by Dixon's ragged breathing. What do you want me to do? That evening they gathered in Dr. Mitchell's office. Marcus and Sarah, the doctor himself, and Carmen Valdez, Judge Ashford's housekeeper for the past 15 years. Carmen had slipped in through the back door, her dark eyes darting nervously. She was a small woman in her mid-40s, with graying hair and hands worn from decades of work. I shouldn't be here. Her voice was barely audible. If the judge finds out, he won't. Marcus pulled out a chair for her. But we need to know what you know about the baby, about what Ashford did. Carmen wrung her hands, tears already forming. I know who she is. I know who put her in that creek. And God forgive me, I can't stay silent anymore. Tell us everything. Sarah moved closer. From the beginning. Carmen took a shaky breath. The baby, she belongs to Miss Victoria, the judge's daughter. Victoria fell in love with a young man named Thomas Rivera, a ranch hand who worked on the Ashford property. Good man, hardworking. But when the judge found out about the baby, Her voice broke. He was furious. Said it would ruin the family name. A baby with no husband, no proper marriage. The scandal would destroy them. So he sent Victoria away, told everyone she was visiting relatives back east. And when the baby came, Victoria gave birth 6 months ago. The judge told her the baby died. Complications, he said. The child didn't survive. Carmen was crying now. Miss Victoria, she cried for weeks, months. She still cries. She thinks her baby is dead. But the baby didn't die. Sarah's voice was tight. No, the judge paid a man to take care of it, to make the problem disappear. Carmen looked at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her basket. I heard them talking. The judge and Frank Dixon. They said the baby would be better off dead than growing up with shame. Who else knows? Just me. And the judge's lawyers probably. But they won't talk. They never do. What about Thomas Rivera? Victoria's, the baby's father? Carmen's face went pale. The judge had him killed. 3 months after he ran him out of town, paid 2 men to find him and put a bullet in his head. Said a Mexican stable boy had no business thinking he could take his daughter. The room fell into stunned silence. Does Victoria know? Sarah could barely get the words out. No. She thinks Thomas abandoned her when he found out about the baby. The judge told her that too. Marcus felt rage building in his chest, not the hot, explosive kind, the cold, focused kind that had made him a successful ranger. We need to tell her. Tonight. She's meeting us here after dark. Be careful. Carmen stood to leave. The judge has eyes everywhere. And if he finds out I told you, Mrs. Valdez, Marcus stopped her. Why? Why risk everything to tell us the truth? Carmen's eyes brimmed with tears. Because I have grandchildren. 3 beautiful grandchildren. And every night I dream about that baby in the sack. I hear her crying. I can't live with this guilt anymore. She crossed herself. God will judge me for staying silent this long. But at least now I've done something right. After Carmen left, the 3 of them sat in heavy silence. Hope slept on, innocent and unaware that her world was about to change. She doesn't know Thomas is alive, Sarah said quietly. What? She thinks he's dead. Ashford told her he had Thomas killed. But if Ashford is capable of lying about the baby dying, you think he lied about Thomas too? It's possible. Men like Ashford lie when it serves them. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. But if Thomas is alive, where is he? Why hasn't he come back for Victoria? Maybe he doesn't know where to find her. Maybe he thinks she's still back east. Sarah's mind was racing. Or maybe Ashford really did have him killed. Marcus stood and began pacing. First things first, we get Victoria here tonight. We show her that Hope is alive. We get her testimony about what Ashford did. Then we worry about Thomas Rivera. A knock at the door made them all freeze. Dr. Mitchell moved to answer it, and Victoria Ashford slipped inside. She was wearing a dark cloak, her face pale in the lamplight. Her eyes went immediately to the basket where Hope slept. Is that? Victoria moved toward the baby as if in a trance. May I hold her? Sarah lifted Hope carefully. The baby stirred but didn't wake, settling into Victoria's arms with a soft sigh. Hello, my darling, Victoria's voice wavered. Hello, my beautiful Hope. I'm your mother. Hope's eyes opened. For a moment, she just stared at this new face. Then she reached up and touched Victoria's cheek, the same way she touched Sarah's when she was content. She's so beautiful. Victoria was crying and laughing at the same time. She's so perfect. How could anyone want to hurt her? Because your father cares more about his reputation than he does about people. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm, even his own family. Victoria looked up at him, this stranger who had saved her daughter. Thank you for finding her, for keeping her safe. She turned to Sarah, for loving her when I couldn't. We need your help, Victoria. Sarah sat down beside her. Your father is trying to take Hope back. He's got lawyers, money, power. The only way we can stop him is if you tell the truth, publicly, about what he did. He'll destroy me. Maybe, but he can't destroy the truth. Not if enough people hear it. Victoria looked down at Hope, who had fallen back asleep in her arm. What do I need to say? Everything. How he sent you away, How he told you the baby died. How he paid Frank Dixon to kill her. Sarah paused. There's something else you need to know. What? It's about Thomas. Your father told you he was killed. Victoria's face went white. He is. My father had him shot in New Mexico. We don't know that for sure. Your father lies, Victoria. He lied about Hope dying. He might have lied about Thomas too. But why would he? To control you, to make sure you had no hope of a life beyond him. Marcus knelt beside her chair. We're going to find out the truth about Thomas, about everything. But right now, we need you to be strong. Can you do that? Victoria stared at Hope's sleeping face for a long moment. Then she nodded. For her. I can do anything for her. The next day, Judge Ashford made his move. He called another town meeting, bringing not just his Dallas lawyers, but also affidavits, documents, and a judge from the county seat who owed him favors. Marcus and Sarah stood at the back of the crowded hall, Hope in Sarah's arms. Victoria sat near the front, her father on one side, his lawyers on the other. She looked small and trapped, like a bird in a cage. Ashford stood and addressed the crowd with practiced ease. Good people of Riverside, I come before you today with a heavy heart. My family has suffered a terrible tragedy. My daughter's infant child was kidnapped from our home by a former employee. We have been searching for weeks, and now, thanks to Sheriff Cole's diligence, we have located her. He gestured toward Hope. That child belongs with her mother, with her family. And I am here today to reclaim what is rightfully ours. The crowd murmured. Ashford had always been persuasive. He'd built his power on knowing exactly what to say and when to say it. Mr. Webb and Miss Brennan have been caring for the child, and for that, we are grateful. But their arrangement is improper and temporary. The law is clear. Victoria is the mother, and she has every right to her daughter. He pulled out a stack of papers. I have here sworn affidavits from 3 doctors who attended the birth, statements from household staff, legal documents establishing Victoria's maternity. His smile was cold. What do you have, Mr. Webb? A story about finding a baby in a creek? Hearsay and speculation? Marcus felt Sarah's hand on his arm. A warning, don't take the bait. Judge Ashford, Marcus's voice carried through the hall. You're right about one thing, the law is clear, but so is the truth. And the truth is that baby was thrown in Miller's Creek to die. Someone tied her up in a feed sack and left her in freezing water. If I hadn't found her, she'd be dead. Prove it. Ashford's eyes glittered. Prove someone tried to kill her, because I have documents saying she was stolen. Can you prove otherwise? Frank Dixon. The name cut through the room like a knife. Frank Dixon can prove it. He's the man you paid to get rid of her. Ashford's face went very still. I don't know any Frank Dixon. Then you won't mind if we bring him in to testify. I mind very much if you waste this court's time with the ravings of a known drunk and liar. How do you know he's a drunk and a liar if you don't know him? The logic trap hung in the air. Ashford's lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, this is irregular. Mr. Webb is not a lawyer. He has no standing in this proceeding. Then let's make it regular. Victoria stood up. The entire room went silent. Let's hear what Frank Dixon has to say. Let's hear the whole truth. Victoria, sit down. Ashford's voice was low and dangerous. No. Victoria turned to face the crowd. I won't sit down. I won't be silent anymore. My father has been lying. To me, to all of you, to everyone. She took a deep breath. My baby didn't die in childbirth. She's alive. She's the child Mr. Webb found in the creek, and my father is the one who ordered her death. The room erupted. Ashford grabbed his daughter's arm, but she jerked away. Don't touch me. You've controlled me my whole life. You sent away the man I loved. You took my baby from me and told me she was dead. You let me grieve for months while she was alive. Her voice rose. No more. I'm done being afraid of you. You're hysterical. Ashford looked at the judge from the county seat. Your Honor, my daughter has been through severe emotional trauma. She's not in her right mind. I'm in my right mind for the first time in my life. Victoria's eyes blazed, and I'm telling the truth. You paid Frank Dixon $50 to kill my baby. You told him to make the problem disappear. The crowd was in chaos now. Half the people were shouting questions. The other half were trying to leave. Sheriff Cole stood frozen, his hand on his gun, unsure what to do. Then the door at the back opened. Frank Dixon stumbled in, looking like a man walking to his own execution. His hands shook. His face was pale, but his voice when he spoke was steady. "She's telling the truth." The room fell silent. Dixon moved forward, every eye on him. "Judge Ashford paid me $50 to kill that baby. Gave me the money in his studies 6 months ago. Told me the family couldn't afford the scandal. Said the child would be better off dead than growing up a bastard." He swallowed hard. "I couldn't do it. I couldn't kill a baby. So I put her in the creek and told myself God would decide if she lived or died." Dixon looked at Marcus. "You found her. You saved her. And I've been living in hell ever since, knowing what I almost did." Ashford was on his feet, his face purple with rage. "This is absurd. This man is lying. He's a drunk and—" "Then explain this." Carmen Valdez stepped out from the crowd. She held up a leather ledger. "I've worked in your house for 15 years, Judge Ashford. I know where you keep your secrets. This book has everything. Every bribe, every blackmail, every crime you have committed for the past 20 years." She opened it, including the $50 payment to Frank Dixon, dated 6 months ago with a notation, "Problem solved." The room exploded into chaos. Judge Ashford didn't move. He stood at the front of the town hall, his face a mask of cold fury, as Sheriff Cole took the ledger from Carmen's trembling hands. "This is theft. That book was taken from my private residence without consent." Ashford's voice was ice. "Any evidence obtained illegally is inadmissible in court. My lawyers will have it thrown out before your lawyers can argue that to Judge Crawford." Sheriff Cole flipped through the pages, his face growing paler with each entry. "But this book is going into evidence. Right now, you're making a mistake, Raymond. A mistake that will cost you everything." "Maybe, but I'm done making mistakes that cost me my soul." Cole gestured to his deputies. "Take Judge Ashford into custody. Charges of conspiracy to commit murder, bribery, fraud, and child endangerment." The deputies moved forward, but Ashford's Dallas lawyers stepped between them. "Sheriff, you are acting outside your jurisdiction. Judge Ashford is a respected member of— He's a man who ordered the murder of his own grandchild." Cole's hand went to his gun. "Now step aside, or I'll add obstruction to your list of problems." The lawyers exchanged glances. One of them pulled out a document. "We have an injunction from Judge Harrison in Dallas. Any arrest of William Ashford must be approved by the territorial court. You proceed at your own legal peril, Sheriff." Marcus watched the scene unfold with growing unease. Ashford's lawyers were good. They'd been preparing for this possibility, building legal barriers that would take weeks to dismantle. Victoria stood alone near the front, her face pale but determined. Sarah moved to her side, still holding hope. "Are you all right? I don't know." Victoria's voice shook. I thought if I just told the truth, it would be over. But he's not going to stop, is he?" "No, men like your father don't stop. They fight until there's nothing left to fight with." The crowd was dispersing now, people fleeing the chaos. Some threw sympathetic glances at Victoria. Others whispered behind their hands, already choosing sides. Marcus recognized the pattern. In a town where Ashford owned half the businesses and held mortgages on half the properties, loyalty would be tested. Sheriff Cole stood with the ledger, facing down Ashford's lawyers. The standoff hung in the air, tense and unresolved. "This isn't over." Ashford's voice cut through the noise. "Not by a long shot." He turned his cold gaze on Marcus and Sarah. "You've made powerful enemies today. Both of you. I hope you understand what that means." Then he walked out, his lawyers flanking him like guards. Victoria watched her father leave, her hands clenched into fists. "He'll come after me now. After all of us. Let him come." Marcus's voice was grim. "We're ready." But they weren't ready. Not for what came next. By Monday morning, the full weight of Ashford's power descended on Riverside like a storm. Dr. Mitchell arrived at his office to find a letter from the Territorial Medical Board. Someone had filed a formal complaint alleging medical malpractice in his treatment of Hope. The letter demanded he appear before a review committee in Dallas within 2 weeks. "This is impossible." Mitchell stared at the document, his hands shaking. "I saved that child's life. There was no malpractice. It's Ashford. Marcus read over his shoulder. He's using the system against us. Even if the charges are dismissed, it'll tie you up for weeks, cost you money you don't have. I can't afford to fight this. My practice barely makes enough as it is. The doctor sank into his chair. If I'm suspended, even temporarily, this town will have no medical care for 50 miles. That's what he's counting on. He wants you to back down, to recant your support. Marcus's jaw tightened. Don't give him what he wants. But the pressure didn't stop with Dr. Mitchell. Sheriff Cole received notice that his debts to the Riverside Bank, debts totaling nearly $800, were being called in immediately. Payment in full due within 30 days or face foreclosure on his home and office. Sarah fared no better. She arrived at the schoolhouse Tuesday morning to find the door locked. A note was tacked to it. School board has voted to terminate your employment effective immediately. Conduct unbecoming a teacher. Your belongings will be sent to you. She stood in the cold morning air, staring at the words until they blurred. Teaching was all she had left of her old life, all that had kept her going after William and Samuel died. Marcus found her there an hour later, still standing in front of the locked door. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Sarah's voice was hollow. This is what he does. He finds what you care about and takes it away. We'll fight it. We'll fight what? He owns the school board. He probably owns the territorial medical board too. And he definitely owns the bank. She turned to face him. He's going to destroy everyone who helped us. Only if we let him. How do we stop a man who controls everything? The question hung between them without answer. That night, Ashford made his next move. Victoria was in her room at the family mansion when her father walked in without knocking. She'd been packing, planning to leave, but he blocked the doorway. Going somewhere? His voice was deceptively mild. I'm leaving. I'm going to stay with Mr. Webb and Miss Brennan, where I can be near my daughter. Your daughter, Ashford laughed, a sound without humor. That bastard child isn't your daughter anymore. She belongs to them now. They've poisoned her against you. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time she reached for you instead of that school teacher? When did she last call you mama? The words cut deep because they were partially true. Hope had spent most of her short life with Marcus and Sarah. Victoria was still a stranger to her own child. That will change. Given time, there is no time. Ashford stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. You made your choice today. You stood against your family in front of the entire town. Do you have any idea what that's cost me? What it's cost you? Victoria's voice rose. You tried to murder my baby. You told me she was dead. You let me grieve for 6 months while she was alive. And you're worried about what it cost you? I did what was necessary to protect this family's reputation. A reputation your mother died to uphold. Don't you dare bring Mother into this. She would be ashamed of you. Lying with a stable hand like a common... He was a good man, better than you'll ever be. Was. Ashford's smile was cruel. Past tense. Because Thomas Rivera is dead, Victoria. I made sure of that. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. You're lying, Miss Brennan said. Miss Brennan is a fool. I had Rivera followed when he left town. My men caught up with him outside Santa Fe. 2 bullets to the chest. They buried him in the desert where no one will ever find him. He watched his daughter's face crumble with satisfaction. The father of your bastard is rotting in an unmarked grave, and you will never see him again. Victoria couldn't breathe. The room spun. She'd been holding on to hope, fragile, desperate hope, that Thomas might still be alive, that somehow, someday they might be reunited. You monster. I'm a father protecting his family. Everything I've done for you. For our name, for your future. You've destroyed my future. You've destroyed everything. Tears streamed down her face. I loved him. And you killed him. Love. Ashford spat the word. You were 19 years old. You knew nothing about love. What you felt was infatuation. Lust. The foolishness of youth. It was real. Real enough to throw away your education? Your position? Your chance at marrying someone worthy of our family? He moved closer. I saved you from a life of poverty with a Mexican ranch hand. Someday you'll understand that. I'll never understand, and I'll never forgive you. Victoria grabbed her bag. I'm leaving, tonight, and you can't stop me. Can I? Ashford's voice dropped to a deadly quiet. If you walk out that door, you're finished. I'll cut you off without a penny. I'll tell everyone in this territory that you're mentally unstable, that you abandoned your own child, that you've been manipulated by opportunists looking to steal what's rightfully ours. Do it. I don't care anymore. You will when you're living on the street, when no respectable person will speak to you, when your bastard daughter grows up knowing her mother was a fallen woman who chose pride over family. Victoria stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time the depth of his cruelty. This was the man who'd raised her, who'd smiled at her as a child, given her gifts, told her he loved her, and beneath it all, he'd been a monster. Hope won't grow up thinking that, because I'm going to tell her the truth. All of it, about you, about Thomas, about everything. She pushed past him toward the door. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. Ashford grabbed her arm, spinning her around. For a moment, his mask slipped completely. She saw rage there, and something else. Fear. You think you've won. You think your testimony and that ledger will bring me down. He leaned close. But you have no idea how deep my connections go. I own judges in 3 counties. I have favors owed from Santa Fe to Austin. Before this is over, your cowboy and his school teacher will wish they'd never heard the name Ashford. He released her with a shove. 3 days, Victoria. I gave them 3 days to return hope. That time is almost up. And when it expires, I'm taking back what's mine, with or without your blessing. Wednesday morning brought a stranger to town. He rode in on a paint horse, his clothes dusty from long travel. He was young, maybe 22, with dark hair and eyes that held both weariness and determination. He stopped at the livery stable, asking questions in lightly accented English. I'm looking for information about a woman named Victoria Ashford. I heard she might be in this area. The stable hand, a kid named Billy, who worked part-time, shrugged. Ashfords live in the big house on the hill, but I wouldn't go up there if I was you. The judge don't take kindly to strangers. The young man's jaw tightened. I'll take my chances. But before he could leave, Billy grabbed his arm. You got business with the Ashfords? Personal business. Then you should know there's trouble brewing. Something about the judge's daughter and a baby. Whole town's talking about it. The stranger went very still. A baby, found in the creek about 2 weeks ago. Judge claims it's his granddaughter. Says it was stolen. But there's rumors. Billy glanced around, lowering his voice. Rumors the judge tried to have the baby killed. That his daughter didn't even know it was alive. Where is the baby now? With Marcus Webb and Sarah Brennan. They're holed up at Doc Mitchell's office, trying to keep the judge from taking her. The stranger's face transformed. Hope flooded his features, followed quickly by fear. Is the mother all right? Far as I know, but like I said, there's trouble. The judge has been putting pressure on folks, making threats. It's getting ugly. The young man pressed a silver dollar into Billy's hand. Thank you for the information. He turned to leave, then paused. If anyone asks, you never saw me. But someone did see him. Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, was walking past the livery when the stranger rode out. She recognized him immediately. She'd been present at the Ashford house years ago when Thomas Rivera worked there. She'd seen the way he looked at Victoria, the way Victoria looked back. She went straight to Judge Ashford's office. By afternoon, the word had spread through Ashford's network. Thomas Rivera was alive, and he was in Riverside looking for Victoria. Marcus was at Dr. Mitchell's office when Sheriff Cole burst in, his face urgent. We have a problem. Multiple problems. What now? Judge Crawford from the county seat just sent word. He's reviewing the ledger, but Ashford's lawyers are filing motions to have it excluded as evidence. They're arguing it was obtained illegally. Carmen gave it to us. She works in his house. That's not illegal. They're saying she was coerced, that we threatened her. Cole ran a hand through his hair. And there's something else. A stranger rode into town this morning asking about Victoria. Young Mexican man, Ashford's got people looking for him. Mexican? Sarah looked up from where she was feeding Hope. Could it be Thomas Rivera? Marcus finished the thought. It has to be. But if Ashford said he was killed, either Ashford lied or his men failed. Either way, if Rivera is here, he's in danger. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her face pale. She'd been staying at the office since the confrontation with her father. "Did you say Thomas? Thomas is here?" "We don't know for sure, but someone matching his description was asking about you." Hope surged in Victoria's eyes, so powerful it was painful to watch. "He's alive. My father lied. Thomas is alive. If it is him, he needs to be careful." Marcus stood. "Ashford will try to finish what he started. We need to find him first." Victoria was already moving toward the door. "If he's looking for me, you can't go out there." Sarah caught her arm. "If Ashford's men see you together, they'll know. They'll tell your father." "I don't care. If Thomas is alive, if he came back for me," her voice broke. "I have to see him." A knock at the door silenced them all. Dr. Mitchell moved to answer it cautiously. A young man stood there, his hat in his hands, his dark eyes searching. "I'm looking for Victoria Ashford." His voice was steady despite the tension in his shoulders. "I heard she might be here." Victoria's breath caught. She pushed past the others. "Thomas?" The young man's face transformed. "Victoria." He stepped inside and she threw herself into his arms, sobbing. He held her like he'd never let go, his own tears falling into her golden hair. "I thought you were dead." My father said, "I know what he said. I know what he tried to do." Thomas pulled back to look at her face. "His men shot me, left me for dead in the desert outside Santa Fe. But a rancher found me, an old man named Francisco Delgado. He and his wife saved my life." "How did you survive?" "It took 3 months before I could walk again. By the time I was strong enough to travel, you disappeared. I've been searching ever since." His eyes found hope in Sarah's arms. "Is that—" Thomas's voice broke. "Is that our daughter?" Victoria nodded, unable to speak. Thomas moved towards Sarah, his hands trembling. "May I?" Sarah transferred Hope into his arms carefully. The baby looked up at this new face with curious eyes. Then she reached up and grabbed his nose, giggling. "Hello, mija," Thomas whispered. "I'm your papa. I've been looking for you for so long." Hope babbled happily, completely at ease. Thomas looked at Marcus and Sarah, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Thank you for saving my family, for keeping them safe when I couldn't. That's what family does." Marcus put his arm around Sarah. "We save each other." The reunion was interrupted by another knock. This time it was Carmen, breathless and terrified. "The judge knows. He knows Thomas is here. He's gathering men. He's coming." "How many men?" "6, maybe more. He's telling them Thomas kidnapped Victoria, that he's dangerous." Marcus grabbed his gun belt. "We need to get them out of here. Now, where can we go?" Victoria looked around desperately. "My ranch," Thomas spoke up. "Francisco left me his land when he died. 100 acres in New Mexico. It's 3 days' ride, but we'd be safe there. Out of Ashford's reach. 3 days might as well be 3 months." Sheriff Cole shook his head. "Ashford will have the territorial marshal after you before you make it past the county line. He'll claim you kidnapped his daughter and grandchild. Then we fight. Not against those odds. Ashford's got money for an army if he wants one." Marcus looked at the faces around him. Victoria and Thomas, reunited after months of grief and searching. Sarah holding Hope, the baby who'd brought them all together. Dr. Mitchell and Carmen, who'd risked everything to help. Sheriff Cole finally finding the courage to stand up. There has to be another way. Sarah's voice cut through the despair. "We have the ledger. We have testimony from Frank Dixon, from Carmen, from Victoria. That has to count for something. It would, if we had time for a proper trial." Cole's face was grim. "But Ashford is moving too fast. By the time we get a hearing, he'll have already taken Hope and made all of you disappear." Victoria straightened, something hardening in her face. "Then we force his hand. We make this so public he can't make it go away." "How?" "We call every newspaper from here to Austin. We get the territorial governor involved. We make sure everyone knows what William Ashford really is. Your father owns half the newspapers in Texas." Thomas said it gently. "And the territorial governor owes him favors. Then we go over his head." Marcus's mind was racing. Federal marshals, the territorial corruption investigation. If Ashford's been bribing judges and officials, that's a federal crime. Getting federal attention takes weeks, months. We don't have months. Sarah looked at Hope. We have maybe hours. Outside, the sun was setting over Riverside. Darkness fell across the town like a curtain. And somewhere in that darkness, Judge William Ashford was gathering his forces for one final move. Victoria stood at the window, Thomas beside her, watching the shadows lengthen. He'll come tonight. My father doesn't wait when he's decided on something. Then we'll be ready. Marcus checked his gun. How many bullets do you have? Not enough to win a war, but enough to make him think twice. This isn't about winning anymore. Sarah's voice was soft. It's about surviving long enough for the truth to matter. Hope fussed in her arms, sensing the tension. Victoria moved to take her daughter, cradling her gently. I'm sorry, sweet girl. Sorry you were born into all this darkness. She kissed Hope's forehead. But I promise you, I promise, we'll get you somewhere safe. Somewhere the darkness can't reach. Thomas put his arm around both of them. Francisco's ranch. It's beautiful there. Mountains and clean water. Space for Hope to grow up without fear. If we can get there. When we get there. Victoria leaned into him. I won't let my father take her again. I won't let him hurt anyone else. A shout from outside made them all freeze. Torches appeared in the darkness, moving toward the office. 6 men, 8, a dozen. More than Marcus had expected. And at the front, riding a black horse, was Judge William Ashford. He's here. Sheriff Cole moved to the window. And he brought half the men in the county, men he owns, men who owe him money or favors or fear him too much to say no. Marcus positioned himself by the door. Cole, you still with us? The sheriff looked at the crowd outside, then at the people inside. At Hope, innocent and unaware. At Victoria and Thomas, holding each other like they might be torn apart any second. At Sarah and Marcus, 2 broken people who'd found a reason to live again. Yeah, I'm with you. Cole drew his gun. Whatever happens next, I'm with you. The torches stopped outside. Ashford's voice boomed through the night. Marcus Webb, Sarah Brennan, send out my daughter and granddaughter. Now, this is your last chance to do this peacefully. Marcus opened the door a crack. They're not going anywhere, then you leave me no choice. Ashford gestured to his men. We're coming in. The standoff held for 3 heartbeats. Ashford's men shifted uneasily, torches casting dancing shadows across their faces. Most of them were ranch hands, store clerks, men who owed the judge money or favors. They weren't killers. But desperation and loyalty to the man who controlled their livelihoods made them dangerous anyway. You have 10 seconds. Ashford's voice cut through the night. After that, we break down the door. Marcus glanced back at the others. Sarah had moved Hope to the back room with Dr. Mitchell. Victoria and Thomas stood together, Thomas's hand on the gun at his hip. Sheriff Cole positioned himself by the window, his face grim. Don't do this, Judge, Cole called out. You're making this worse for yourself. Worse? How could it possibly be worse than what you've already done to me? You've turned my daughter against me. You've stolen my grandchild. You've tried to destroy my reputation with lies and fabrications. Ashford's horse stamped impatiently. I'm taking back what's mine, and anyone who stands in my way will regret it. She's not yours to take. Victoria appeared in the doorway, her voice carrying across the yard. Hope is my daughter, not yours, mine, and I'm choosing where she goes, who she's with. Murmurs ran through Ashford's men. Some of them shifted uncomfortably. They knew Victoria, had watched her grow up. This wasn't some stranger defending a stolen child. This was Ashford's own daughter standing against him. Victoria, get inside. Marcus tried to pull her back, but she shook him off. No, he needs to hear this. All of them need to hear it. She stepped fully into the doorway, illuminated by the torchlight. My father told me my baby died. He let me grieve for 6 months while she was alive. He paid Frank Dixon to kill her. And when that didn't work, he tried to use his money and power to take her anyway. She looked at the men gathered behind her father. Some of you have known me since I was a child. You've seen my father's cruelty. You've felt it yourselves when you couldn't pay your debts or disagreed with him. Her voice strengthened. Is this what you want to be part of? Taking a baby from people who love her? helping a man who tried to murder his own grandchild. A few of the men lowered their torches. One of them, a ranch hand named Peter, who'd worked for the Ashfords for years, stepped back. "I'm sorry, Judge. I can't do this." "Peter," Ashford's voice was deadly quiet. "You walk away now, you'll never work in this county again. Then I'll work somewhere else." Peter dropped his torch and walked into the darkness. Two more men followed, then another. Ashford watched his army crumbling, his face darkening with each defection. "Cowards. All of you." He turned to the remaining men. "Double wages to anyone who helps me retrieve my property." The promise of money held some of them. 6 men remained, their faces hardening with greed or desperation. It was enough for violence. "Last chance, Webb. Give me the child or we take her." Marcus stepped out to stand beside Victoria, his hand on his gun. "You'll have to go through me first. So be it." Ashford raised his hand to signal his men forward. A gunshot cracked through the night. Everyone froze. The bullet had come from the darkness to the left, striking the ground between Ashford and his men. A voice called out, authoritative and cold. Nobody moves. 3 men emerged from the shadows. They wore badges that caught the torchlight. Federal badges. 2 of them carried rifles trained on Ashford's remaining men. The third, an older man with iron gray hair and a weathered face, walked forward with the confidence of someone who'd faced down worse than a small-town judge. "Agent Daniel Hutchinson, United States Marshal, Service." The man held up his badge. "Judge William Ashford, you're under arrest for corruption, bribery, and obstruction of justice." "This is outrageous." Ashford's voice cracked slightly. "You have no jurisdiction here. I demand to see your warrant." Hutchinson pulled out a folded document, signed by federal Judge Morrison in Santa Fe. "We've been investigating territorial corruption for 6 months. Your name came up more than once." He gestured to one of his deputies, who moved forward with iron manacles. "We were planning to arrest you next week, but when we heard you were about to assault a private residence to kidnap a child, we decided to move our timeline up." "I wasn't kidnapping anyone." "That's my granddaughter. These people stole her from—" "Save it for the trial." Hutchinson nodded to his deputy. "William Ashford, you're charged with 15 counts of bribery, 8 counts of corruption of public officials, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of federal investigation." He looked at the remaining men. "Anyone else want to interfere with a federal arrest?" The 6 men dropped their torches and scattered into the night. Ashford stood alone, his hands being manacled behind his back, his empire crumbling around him. For the first time since Marcus had known him, the judge looked old, diminished. "This isn't over." Ashford's voice was barely a whisper. "I have lawyers, connections, money. You had those things." Hutchinson's voice was flat, past tense. "Federal government's been seizing your assets for the past 3 hours. Bank accounts, properties, everything purchased with bribery money or obtained through corruption." He gestured to his deputies. "Take him to the federal holding facility in Santa Fe. Keep him separated from local authorities. Some of them are on his payroll." As they led Ashford away, he turned back one last time to look at Victoria. His daughter met his gaze without flinching. "I hope it was worth it." Ashford's words carried venom and sorrow in equal measure. "Destroying your father for a bastard child." "She's not a bastard. She's my daughter, and she's worth everything." Victoria's voice didn't waver. "More than you'll ever understand." Ashford opened his mouth to respond, but the marshals pulled him away into the darkness. The sound of hoofbeats faded, and suddenly, the yard was empty except for the smoking torches abandoned on the ground. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Sarah emerged from the office with Hope in her arms, Dr. Mitchell close behind. "How did they know?" Sarah looked at the federal marshal who remained. "How did you know to come tonight?" "We didn't." Hutchinson smiled slightly. "We were camped outside town, planning to arrest Ashford in the morning. But one of your townspeople, a woman named Carmen Valdez, came to us this afternoon. She told us about the ledger, about the baby, about everything." He gestured to the office. "She said Ashford was planning something tonight, that people might get hurt. We decided we couldn't wait." "Carmen." Victoria's eyes welled up. "She saved us. She gave us enough evidence to move forward immediately. That ledger of Ashford's contained names, dates, amounts, proof of corruption going back 15 years. Hutchinson's face hardened. William Ashford won't see freedom again. Not in this lifetime. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now you folks try to get back to normal. Hutchinson tipped his hat. We'll need statements from all of you for the trial, but that can wait until morning. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, what you did here, standing up to a man like Ashford, that takes courage. This territory needs more people like you. After the marshal left, they stood in the sudden quiet. The crisis that had consumed their lives for 2 weeks was over. Ashford was arrested. Hope was safe. But the silence felt strange, uncomfortable. What do we do now? Sarah voiced what they were all thinking. We figure out what comes next. Marcus looked at Victoria and Thomas. You two need to decide about Hope, about what you want. Victoria moved to Sarah and gently took her daughter. Hope looked up at her mother, then reached towards Sarah with a confused expression. Mama? The word cut through Victoria like a knife. Sarah's face crumpled. She doesn't know me. Victoria's voice broke. My own daughter doesn't recognize me as her mother. That's not true. Thomas put his arm around her. She's just confused. She's been through so much. No, Victoria looked at Sarah with tears streaming down her face. Hope knows who her mother is, the person who fed her, who stayed up with her at night, who loved her when I couldn't. She held the baby out to Sarah. Take her, please. Victoria, take her. Sarah accepted Hope, who immediately calmed and snuggled against her chest. The contrast was stark, painful. Victoria watched her daughter settle into Sarah's arms and made a decision that would break her heart, but save it at the same time. I want you to keep her. The words fell into silence. What? Sarah stared at her. You're her mother. You can't just... I gave birth to her, but you raised her. You saved her. You love her. Victoria's voice steadied. I'm not giving her up. I'm asking you to share her. Thomas stepped forward. Francisco's ranch. There's room for all of us. You, Marcus, Victoria, and me. Hope. His eyes were earnest. We could be a family. All of us together. That's crazy. Marcus shook his head. People don't do that. Maybe they should. Victoria looked at each of them in turn. We're all broken in different ways. We've all lost people we loved. But hope brought us together. And maybe that wasn't an accident. Sarah held Hope tighter, afraid to hope for something so impossible. You'd really want us there? Even though we're not what? Not her real parents? Thomas smiled. You're as real as it gets. Hope needs all of us. Her 2 mothers, her 2 fathers. A family built on choice instead of blood. Marcus looked at Sarah, a question in his eyes. She looked back, and something passed between them. Understanding, agreement, a leap of faith into unknown territory. When do we leave? Marcus's voice was gruff, but his eyes were bright. Tomorrow feels too soon. But staying here means living in Ashford's shadow, Victoria finished. Even with him in prison, this town will always remember, always whisper. Then we start over, somewhere new. Sarah looked down at Hope, somewhere she can grow up without knowing what happened, without carrying the weight of all this darkness. Dr. Mitchell cleared his throat from the doorway. Before you all ride off into the sunset, there's something you should know about the trial. What about it? Ashford's lawyers will fight this. Even from prison, he'll try to destroy anyone who testified against him. Federal charges or not, he has connections. Money hidden away that the marshals haven't found yet. So what do? We make sure the truth gets out first. Sheriff Cole emerged from the shadows where he'd been watching. Every newspaper, every courthouse, every town hall from here to Austin. We tell Hope's story. We tell what Ashford did. By the time his lawyers try to spin it, everyone will already know the truth. The next morning, they began preparations to leave. The news of Ashford's arrest had spread through Riverside like wildfire. Some people celebrated. Others mourned the fall of the man who'd controlled their livelihoods. A few came to Dr. Mitchell's office to apologize. Martha Dawson was among them. She stood on the threshold with her husband Henry, her face showing genuine remorse. I owe you an apology, Miss Brennan. All of you, I spoke harshly about your arrangement, about you living together unwed. Sarah started to respond, but Martha raised a hand. Let me finish. I was wrong. What you did, saving that baby, standing up to Judge Ashford, that took more courage than anything I've seen in my 60 years. She pulled a small purse from her pocket. It's not much, $50, but I want you to have it. For your journey, for hope, Mrs. Dawson. We can't. Yes, you can, Henry spoke up. The judge tried to foreclose on our property 3 years ago when we were late on one payment. You standing up to him? That means something to us. To a lot of people. He pressed the money into Marcus's hand. Take it. Start your new life right. Others came throughout the day. The blacksmith brought supplies for the journey. The general store owner donated food and clothing. Even some of Ashford's former employees, freed now from his control, offered what they could. By afternoon, they had enough provisions for the 3-day journey to New Mexico, enough money to start building their new life, and enough goodwill to restore some faith in humanity. Carmen Valdez came last. She arrived as the sun was setting, her face drawn but peaceful. I wanted to say goodbye, and thank you. Thank us? Sarah embraced her. You're the one who saved us. You brought the marshals. I did what I should have done months ago, when I first heard the judge's plan. Carmen looked at Hope, playing happily with Victoria and Thomas. That child deserves better than the darkness I helped create by staying silent. You found your courage when it mattered most. Marcus gripped her shoulder. That's what counts. What will you do now? The judge's household is being dissolved. His assets seized. I'll find work somewhere else. Come with us. The words came from Victoria. To New Mexico. We'll need help building the homestead. Getting settled. And Hope. She looked at the woman who'd been like a second mother to her. Hope should know the woman who saved her life. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. You would do that? After everything? Family isn't just blood. Thomas said it with the conviction of someone who'd learned it the hard way. It's the people who show up when it matters. Carmen looked at the unlikely group before her. A former Texas Ranger and a widowed schoolteacher. A young mother and the man who'd survived death to find her. A baby who'd been thrown away and fought to survive. I would be honored. That night, as they finished packing, a courier arrived from Santa Fe. He carried an official-looking envelope sealed with a territorial seal. Marcus Webb? The courier was young, barely 20. I have documents from the territorial court. Marcus opened the envelope with growing concern, but as he read, his face transformed from worry to wonder. What is it? Sarah moved to his side. It's from Judge Morrison, the federal judge overseeing Ashford's case. Marcus's voice was rough with emotion. He's granting us emergency custody of Hope, both of us. Legal guardianship until Victoria turns 21 and can make her own decisions about custody arrangements. He looked up at Victoria. You knew about this? I petitioned yesterday, after the marshals arrested my father. Victoria smiled through tears. I told Judge Morrison everything, about how you saved Hope, about how you and Sarah cared for her, about the family we want to build. She moved to stand beside Thomas. The judge said it was irregular, unprecedented. But given the circumstances, given what my father tried to do, he decided Hope's welfare was more important than convention. So we're legal guardians, you and Sarah both. Marcus looked at the document, then at Sarah, then at Hope playing on the floor. We're her parents, officially. In the eyes of the law, yes. Victoria knelt beside Hope. But in the eyes of everyone who matters, you've always been her parents. This just makes it official. Hope crawled over to Marcus and pulled herself up using his leg. She looked up at him with those blue eyes that had first broken through his walls. Papa. The word was clear, intentional. She turned to Sarah. Mama. Then she looked at Victoria and Thomas, her face scrunching with concentration. Mama. Papa. She giggled at her own cleverness, having identified all 4 of the adults who loved her. 2 mamas. Victoria laughed through tears. 2 papas. You're the luckiest girl in Texas. Hope clapped her hands, delighted with the attention. The trial began 3 weeks later in Santa Fe. Marcus, Sarah, Victoria, and Thomas made the journey to testify, leaving Hope with Carmen at Francisco's ranch. The homestead was everything Thomas had promised. Mountains rising in the distance, clean water from a spring-fed creek, land enough for cattle and crops and a future. But first, They had to face the past one final time. The courtroom was packed with spectators, journalists, and Ashford's remaining supporters. The judge sat at the defendant's table, his silver hair perfectly combed, his suit impeccable. But something had changed. The arrogance was gone. In its place sat cold calculation. Ashford's lawyers were good. They challenged every piece of evidence, questioned every witness's credibility, tried to paint their client as a victim of vindictive former employees and opportunists looking for money. But the ledger was damning, page after page of transactions that couldn't be explained away. Names of judges, sheriffs, territorial officials, amounts paid, favors rendered. A systematic record of corruption spanning 15 years. Frank Dixon testified first. He described, in halting words, how Ashford had paid him to dispose of the baby, how he'd tied Hope in a burlap sack and thrown her in Miller's Creek, how guilt had eaten at him every day since. Ashford's lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Carmichael, tore into him. "Mr. Dixon, isn't it true you're a known alcoholic? That you've been arrested multiple times for public intoxication?" "Yes. And isn't it possible that in your drunken state, you imagined this conversation with Judge Ashford? That you fabricated this entire story?" "No, I remember every word, every detail. It's burned into my brain. Or perhaps someone paid you to say these things? To lie about an innocent man? Nobody paid me. Nobody had to." Dixon's voice broke. "I did what I did, and I'll carry that shame to my grave. But I'm telling the truth now. That has to count for something." Carmen testified next. She described 15 years of working in the Ashford household, watching the judge manipulate, threaten, and destroy anyone who crossed him. She detailed the night she overheard him meeting with Dixon, the payments she'd witnessed, the ledger she'd seen him updating. Carmichael tried to discredit her too. "Mrs. Valdez, you were fired from your position, weren't you?" "I left after my client discovered you'd been stealing from the household. I never stole anything." Carmen's voice was steady. "I left because I couldn't watch him destroy any more lives. Convenient timing. Just when he was about to expose your theft, you suddenly develop a conscience?" "My conscience has been bothering me for 15 years. I'm just finally acting on it." Then came Victoria's testimony. She walked to the stand with her head high, refusing to look at her father. Carmichael tried to paint her as an ungrateful daughter, a troubled young woman manipulated by opportunists. But Victoria didn't break. She described her father's cruelty, his obsession with reputation, his rage when he discovered her pregnancy, the lies he told her about Hope dying, the months of grief while her baby was alive. "Miss Ashford," Carmichael's voice was oily, "isn't it true you've always been emotionally unstable? That you've required medical treatment for melancholia?" "I was sad. My father told me my baby was dead. Any mother would be sad. But this sadness, it affected your judgment, didn't it? Made you susceptible to suggestion?" "The only person who affected my judgment was my father. He controlled every aspect of my life. Who I could see, where I could go, what I could think." Her voice strengthened. "The man I loved, he told me was dead. My baby, he tried to kill. And you're asking if I'm mentally unstable?" She looked directly at the jury. "I'm the sanest I've ever been, because I'm finally free of him." Thomas testified about being shot and left for dead, about Francisco Delgado saving his life, about searching for Victoria for months, not knowing if he'd ever find her. His testimony corroborated Victoria's account and destroyed Ashford's claim that Thomas had abandoned her. But it was Marcus's testimony that changed everything. Marshall Hutchinson had advised him to be factual, unemotional. Just describe finding Hope, the condition she was in, the medical treatment she received. Stick to what could be proven. Marcus started that way, but as he described pulling Hope from the creek, feeling how cold she was, hearing her whisper "Mama" with blue lips, his carefully controlled demeanor cracked. "She should have died." His voice was rough. Any other baby would have. The water was freezing. She'd been in that sack for who knows how long, but she held on. She fought. He looked at Ashford for the first time, and the man who ordered her death is sitting right there. Her own grandfather, a man who values his reputation more than his own blood. Mr. Webb, the judge, Judge Morrison, not Ashford, spoke gently. Please confine yourself to the facts. These are the facts, Your Honor. That baby grabbed my finger while I was pulling her out. She looked at me with these blue eyes and whispered for her mother, a mother who thought she was dead because this man lied to her. Marcus turned back to the jury. I spent 8 years dead inside after losing my wife and daughter. I'd forgotten what it meant to feel anything. But Hope, that baby, she brought me back to life. She brought all of us back to life. He gestured to where Sarah, Victoria, and Thomas sat. We're not saints. We're just people who saw a child in need and refused to look away, who stood up to power when it would have been easier to back down, who chose love over fear. His voice dropped. Judge Ashford chose fear every time. Fear of scandal, fear of losing control, fear of anything that threatened his perfect image. And that fear made him capable of ordering the death of his own grandchild. Carmichael was on his feet. Objection! The witness is speculating about my client's motivations. Sustained, but the damage was done. The jury had seen Marcus's raw emotion, had heard the conviction in his voice. Several of them were wiping their eyes. The prosecution rested. Ashford's defense was clinical, focused on technicalities and character assassination. They couldn't dispute the ledger's authenticity, so they tried to argue it had been obtained illegally. They couldn't explain away the testimony, so they tried to discredit the witnesses. But when Ashford himself took the stand, his arrogance returned. He couldn't help himself. I built this territory. His voice rang with self-righteousness. When I arrived 30 years ago, Riverside was nothing, a collection of shacks and desperate people. I brought order, commerce, civilization. He looked at the jury. Yes, I made deals. I formed alliances. I did what was necessary to ensure stability and growth. If that meant occasionally bending rules or greasing palms, so be it. That's how progress happens. And the baby? Hutchinson, acting as prosecutor, asked quietly, what about Hope? Ashford's jaw tightened. An unfortunate situation. My daughter made a mistake. I attempted to handle it quietly to protect her future, protect our family name. By ordering her death, I never ordered anyone's death. But Ashford's eyes flickered to Frank Dixon. I may have suggested, may have implied that the situation needed to be resolved. If Dixon misunderstood my intentions, you paid him $50. You wrote it in your ledger. Problem solved. That notation could refer to anything. To what, specifically? I don't recall. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, their faces were grim. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find? Guilty. On the charges of bribery of public officials? Guilty. On the charges of corruption and fraud? Guilty on all counts. Ashford sat motionless as the verdicts were read. 15 counts. Guilty on every one. Judge Morrison looked at the defendant without sympathy. William Ashford, you have been found guilty of crimes that strike at the heart of justice itself. You used your position and wealth to corrupt the very institutions meant to protect people from men like you. He paused. You attempted to murder an infant to protect your reputation. You lied to your daughter about her child's death. You had a man shot and left for dead in the desert. And through it all, you showed no remorse, no understanding of the pain you caused. Morrison's voice hardened. I sentence you to life imprisonment at the territorial prison. You will serve your time in isolation from the general population for your own protection. You will have no contact with family members except through written correspondence, subject to review. And you will never again hold a position of authority over another human being. He brought down his gavel. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court has none. As marshals led Ashford away, he looked back one final time at Victoria. His daughter met his gaze without flinching, without tears, without the fear that had defined their relationship for 19 years. Goodbye, Father. Her voice was soft but clear. I forgive you, but I'll never forget. Ashford's face crumpled. For just a moment, the mask fell completely. Marcus saw the old man beneath, broken, defeated, alone. Then the marshals pulled him through the door and he was gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them. Questions flew from all directions. How does it feel to see justice served? What will you do now? Are you really raising the baby together? Sarah stepped forward, hope in her arms. We're going home. To build a life where this little girl can grow up surrounded by love instead of hatred. Where family means something more than blood. She looked at Marcus, Victoria, and Thomas. We're going to prove that broken people can heal. That love is stronger than fear. And that sometimes the family you choose is the one that saves you. The journey to New Mexico took 5 days instead of 3. Hope ran a fever the second night, and they stopped at a small town to let Dr. Mitchell, who decided to join them, examine her. The fever broke by morning, but the delay reminded them all how fragile life could be. They traveled as a caravan. Marcus and Sarah in one wagon with Hope and their supplies, Thunder tethered behind. Victoria and Thomas in another with Carmen and the doctor. The landscape changed as they moved west. The flat Texas plains gave way to rolling hills, then to the dramatic peaks of the New Mexico territory. On the 4th day, Thomas rode ahead to scout the route. He returned at sunset, his face transformed. We're close. Maybe 3 hours. If we push through the night, no. Victoria shook her head. Hope needs rest. We all do. We've waited this long. We can wait one more night. They made camp in a valley sheltered by cottonwoods. As the adults set up tents and built a fire, Hope crawled between them, babbling happily. She'd grown used to the travel, to the constant presence of her 4 parents and the extended family they'd become. Marcus watched her grab Sarah's skirt with one hand and reach for Victoria with the other, trying to pull both women together. Something about the gesture made his chest tight. She's building bridges. Sarah followed his gaze. Between all of us, making sure we stay connected. Smart girl. Thomas sat down beside them, bouncing Hope on his knee. She knows what she needs, all of us together. Dr. Mitchell approached the fire, his medical bag in hand. I've been thinking about setting up a practice once we're settled. The nearest town is 15 miles away, but there are homesteads scattered throughout the valley. People will need medical care. You're staying? Sarah's voice lifted with hope. Where else would I go? You're my family now, all of you. Carmen joined them carrying a pot of stew she'd been cooking. And I've been thinking about a garden. Francisco's ranch has good soil. We could grow vegetables, herbs, maybe even start a small orchard. She ladled stew into bowls. A family needs to eat well. They sat around the fire as darkness fell, passing Hope between them. The baby was getting sleepy, her eyes drooping. Victoria held her, humming a lullaby her own mother had sung to her before she died. What was she like? Sarah asked softly. Your mother? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Kind, gentle. Everything my father wasn't. She died when I was 7. Pneumonia. After that, it was just him and me. She looked down at Hope. I used to wonder what she would think of the choices I've made. Falling in love with Thomas. Having Hope. Standing up to my father. I think she'd be proud. Thomas put his arm around her. You became the mother she would have wanted you to be. Hope stirred in Victoria's arms, making a sleepy sound. Marcus stood and gently took her. Time for bed, little one. He carried her to the tent he and Sarah had set up. Sarah followed, and together they settled Hope into her makeshift cradle. The baby's eyes opened one last time, looking between them. Mama, Papa. Her voice was drowsy, content. Sleep now. Sarah kissed her forehead. Tomorrow you'll see your new home. Hope's eyes closed. Within seconds, her breathing deepened into sleep. Marcus and Sarah stood over her, neither wanting to leave this moment. Are we doing the right thing? Sarah's voice was barely audible. Raising her like this? With 4 parents and no conventional structure? I don't know if it's right, but I know it's real. Marcus took Sarah's hand. Everything we've built, it's based on love. That has to count for something. What if people judge her when she's older? What if she resents us for making her different? Then we'll deal with it together, all of us. He pulled Sarah closer. But I think she's going to be stronger for it. She'll grow up knowing that family isn't about fitting into a box. It's about people who show up, who refuse to give up. Sarah leaned against him. I never thought I'd feel this again. After losing William and Samuel, I was so sure my chance at family was over. Mine too, after Rebecca and Lily. They stood in the silence holding each other, watching Hope sleep. Outside, they could hear Victoria and Thomas talking quietly. Carmen singing in Spanish as she cleaned the dishes. Dr. Mitchell writing in his journal. "This is what saving each other looks like," Sarah whispered. "Not some grand gesture. Just this. Being present. Building something new from broken pieces." They reached Francisco's ranch the next afternoon. Thomas had described it, but words couldn't capture the reality. The cabin sat in a valley surrounded by mountains. A spring-fed creek ran crystal clear past the front door. Meadows stretched in every direction, perfect for cattle or horses. The air was so clean it almost hurt to breathe. "This is it." Thomas's voice was thick with emotion. "This is home." The cabin was small, 2 rooms, a loft, a stone fireplace, but solidly built. Francisco had been a craftsman. Every board was carefully placed, every joint perfect. "We'll need to expand." Marcus walked the perimeter, already planning. Add at least 2 more rooms. Maybe a separate building for the doctor's practice. A barn for animals. Victoria pointed to a flat area near the creek. "And Carmen's right about the garden. That spot gets sun all day." Hope squirmed to be put down. The moment her feet touched the ground, she took off running on unsteady legs, laughing as she headed toward the creek. "Hope, wait!" Sarah ran after her. Marcus caught up with them at the water's edge. Hope was crouched down, patting the surface with her hands, delighted by the splash. "Pretty." She looked up at them with joy. "Water pretty." "Yes, it is." Marcus knelt beside her. "This is where you're going to grow up, where you're going to learn to swim and fish and ride horses." Hope clapped her hands, not understanding but feeding off his excitement. That night, they gathered in the small cabin. It was cramped with all 6 of them, but nobody minded. They'd spent weeks living in close quarters. This felt like luxury by comparison. "We should make this official." Dr. Mitchell stood, raising a tin cup of water since they had no whiskey. "A toast. To new beginnings. To the family we've chosen. To Hope, who brought us all together. To Hope." They echoed, cups raised. Hope giggled and clapped, thinking it was a game. But there was something else that needed to be said. Something that had been building since they left Riverside. Marcus stood. "I want to marry Sarah." The words came out in a rush. "I know it's sudden. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. But I also know that what I feel for her is real. That she's brought me back to life in a way I never thought possible." He turned to Sarah, who was staring at him with wide eyes. "I'm not asking you to answer now. I'm putting it out there. Because life is short and uncertain. And I don't want to waste another minute pretending I don't know what I want." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Yes." "What?" "Yes, I'll marry you." She laughed through her tears. "You think I want to waste time either? After everything we've been through?" She moved to him and he pulled her into his arms, kissing her while the others cheered. Hope squealed with delight, clapping her hands. "I guess we're having a wedding." Victoria smiled, but there was sadness in it too. Thomas caught the look and took her hand. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything's perfect. I'm just..." She gestured to Marcus and Sarah. "I'm happy for them, but it makes me think about us, about what we can't have." "Who says we can't have it?" Thomas stood, pulling Victoria up with him. "We don't need a judge or a preacher to make this real. We love each other. We have a daughter together. We've survived everything that was thrown at us." He looked into her eyes. "Victoria Ashford, will you be my wife? In the eyes of God and everyone here, even if the law won't recognize it yet?" Victoria's breath caught. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." They kissed while Carmen wiped her eyes and Dr. Mitchell beamed. "Well then," the doctor cleared his throat, "I may not be a preacher, but I've read enough scripture to know the important parts, and I'd be honored to perform both ceremonies. If you'll have me." So under the New Mexico stars, with Hope as their witness and the mountains as their cathedral, Marcus married Sarah and Thomas married Victoria. The vows were simple, heartfelt, promises to love, to protect, to stand together no matter what came. When it was over, they stood as 2 couples but one family, bound not by law or convention, but by something deeper, by choice and love, and the refusal to give up on each other. Hope toddled between them, grabbing hands, pulling everyone together. Her family, all of them. The first year was harder than any of them expected. They worked from dawn to dusk, expanding the cabin, planting crops, building fences. Marcus and Thomas hunted for meat. Sarah and Victoria managed the household and cared for Hope. Carmen tended her garden with fierce devotion. Dr. Mitchell set up a practice that drew patients from surrounding homesteads. Money was tight. Some weeks they lived on beans and cornbread. A late frost killed their first planting. The winter was brutal, trapping them inside for days at a time. But they survived. More than survived. They thrived. Hope grew into a bright, curious toddler. She said her first full sentence at 14 months, pointing at the mountains. "Big rocks, Mama." She took her first unassisted steps at 15 months, walking from Sarah to Victoria and back again, delighted that both women cheered for her. By her second birthday, she could identify all four of her parents by name and role. She called Sarah and Victoria both Mama, differentiated by adding their names, Mama Sarah and Mama Tori. Marcus and Thomas were Papa Marcus and Papa Thomas. When visitors from the nearby town expressed confusion about the arrangement, Hope would explain, with toddler certainty, "I got two mamas, two papas. They all love me, and that was that." She saw nothing strange about it because, to her, it was normal. The homestead grew. They added two more rooms to the main cabin, giving each couple privacy. Built a separate cabin for Dr. Mitchell and Carmen, who'd become something more than friends as the months passed. Constructed a barn, a smokehouse, a workshop. Other families settled nearby, drawn by word of good land and a welcoming community. Some were escaping their own troubled pasts. Others were simply looking for a fresh start. Marcus and Sarah welcomed them all, helping new arrivals build their homes, sharing supplies when they could. A community formed, and at its heart was the unconventional family that had survived everything Judge William Ashford had thrown at them. But the past wasn't quite finished with them yet. Hope was 3 years old when the letter arrived. It came via courier from Santa Fe, addressed to Victoria in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it with trembling hands. Marcus watched her face go pale. "What is it?" "It's from my father. From prison. What does he want?" Victoria read the letter silently, her expression shifting from fear to sadness to something like pity. "He's dying. Consumption. The prison doctor says he has maybe 6 months." She looked up. "He wants to see Hope before he dies, to meet his granddaughter." The room fell silent. Sarah moved to stand beside Victoria. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." Victoria set the letter down. "Part of me wants to burn this and pretend it never came. He doesn't deserve to meet her. Not after what he did. But he's dying, and he's still my father, despite everything." She looked at Thomas, then at Marcus and Sarah. "I can't make this decision alone. Hope is all of ours. We all get a say." They talked for hours. Dr. Mitchell pointed out that Hope was too young to understand who Ashford was, that seeing a dying old man in prison might traumatize her. Carmen argued that forgiveness was powerful even when it wasn't deserved. Thomas said the choice should be Victoria's alone. She'd suffered the most at Ashford's hands. But it was Marcus who cut through the arguments. "This isn't about Ashford. It's about Hope. And the lesson we want to teach her about family, about forgiveness, about mercy." He looked at Victoria. "If we take her to see him, we're teaching her that even people who do terrible things are still human, that anger and vengeance aren't the same as justice, that we can choose grace even when it's hard." "And if we don't?" Sarah asked. "Then we're teaching her that some sins are unforgivable, that family can be discarded when it becomes inconvenient." Marcus shrugged. "I don't know which lesson is right, but I know which one feels more like the people we want to be." In the end, Victoria decided to go, but not alone. All four parents made the journey to Santa Fe with Hope, leaving Carmen and Dr. Mitchell to tend the homestead. The territorial prison was a grim place. Stone walls and iron bars, the smell of unwashed bodies and despair. Hope clung to Sarah as they were led through corridors to the infirmary. William Ashford lay in a narrow bed diminished by illness. He'd lost weight. His silver hair was thin and dull. His face was gaunt. But his eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes, were the same. "Victoria." His voice was raspy but steady. "You came. I almost didn't. Victoria stood at the foot of the bed, Thomas beside her. I don't know why I'm here. You don't deserve my forgiveness. You don't deserve to meet her. I know. Ashford's gaze went to Hope, who was peering at him from behind Sarah's skirt. Is that? This is Hope, Victoria's voice was firm. Your granddaughter, the child you tried to kill. Ashford's face crumpled. For the first time since Victoria had known him, he looked genuinely broken. She's beautiful. She looks like you, like your mother. Hope studied him with a 3-year-old's frank curiosity. Are you sick? The question, asked in such an innocent voice, seemed to undo something in Ashford. Yes, little one, very sick. Hope considered this. Mama Sarah says when you're sick, you need love. And soup. She reached into the bag Sarah was carrying and pulled out a small cloth doll. You can have my dolly. She makes me feel better when I'm sad. Hope walked to the bed and carefully placed the doll on Ashford's chest. The old man stared at it, then at the child, his eyes filling with tears. I don't deserve. Nobody deserves kindness. Victoria's voice was hard. We choose to give it anyway. That's what makes it powerful. She moved closer to the bed. I forgive you, Father, not because you've earned it, not because what you did wasn't monstrous, but because holding on to hatred only poisons me. I choose to let it go. Ashford reached for her hand with a trembling grip. I was so afraid. Of scandal, of losing control, of not being the man your mother believed I was. His voice faltered. I destroyed everything trying to protect an image that didn't matter. I lost you. I almost lost hope. And for what? For nothing. Victoria squeezed his hand once, then released it. But we survived anyway. We built something better without you. She gestured to Marcus, Sarah, and Thomas. Hope has 4 parents who love her, who would die for her, who put her welfare above their pride. She'll grow up knowing what real family looks like, not what you tried to build with fear and control. Ashford looked at each of them in turn. Take care of her, all of you. Give her everything I couldn't give Victoria. We will. Marcus spoke for the first time. Not because you asked, but because that's what love does. They left shortly after. Hope waved goodbye to the old man in the bed, clutching the doll he'd given back to her. Bye-bye, sick man. Feel better. Ashford raised a hand in farewell, his face wet with tears. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived informing them that William Ashford had died in his sleep. His few remaining assets, a small amount of money the federal seizure had missed, were left to Hope in trust. Victoria burned the letter and scattered the ashes in the creek. She's free of him now. Thomas held her as she cried. We all are. The years passed in a blur of seasons. Hope grew from a toddler into a bright, fearless child. She learned to ride horses before she could read, helped Carmen in the garden, followed Der Mitchell on his rounds to neighboring homesteads, listened to Marcus's stories about his ranger days and Sarah's lessons about reading and arithmetic. By the time she was 5, Hope was the undisputed heart of their community. Other children adored her. Adults smiled when she raced past. She had her mother Victoria's golden hair and her father Thomas's dark eyes. But her spirit, that fierce, joyful, unbreakable spirit, was entirely her own. On her 5th birthday, they threw her a party. Families from 3 neighboring homesteads came. There was music and dancing, food enough to feed an army, games for the children. As the sun set, they gathered around a massive cake Carmen had spent days perfecting. 5 candles flickered in the growing darkness. Make a wish, sweet girl. Sarah's voice was soft. Hope closed her eyes tight, her face scrunched in concentration. Then she opened them and blew with all her might. Every candle went out. What did you wish for? One of the neighbor children asked. Can't tell. Won't come true. Hope shook her head solemnly. But later, after the guests had left and the family was cleaning up, Hope pulled Sarah aside. Can I tell you my wish? Just you? Of course. Sarah knelt down to Hope's level. I wish that everyone could feel as loved as I do. That all the sad people and lonely people could find a family like mine. Hope's voice was serious. Is that a good wish? Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Sarah felt wetness on her cheeks. Do you think it'll come true? Sarah pulled Hope into her arms. I think you're going to spend your whole life making it come true. One person at a time. Hope seemed satisfied with that answer. She hugged Sarah tight, then ran off to where Marcus was teaching some of the other children how to skip stones. She's special. Victoria appeared beside Sarah, not just because she's ours, but because she carries something. Hope, I guess, that the rest of us lost somewhere along the way. Maybe that's why we named her that. Sarah watched Hope laugh as a stone skipped 3 times. She reminds us what's possible when we refuse to give up. That night, after Hope was in bed, the 4 parents sat on the porch watching stars emerge in the endless New Mexico sky. Do you ever regret it? Thomas asked. The unconventional arrangement? The way we're raising her? Never, Marcus said it without hesitation. She's the happiest child I've ever seen. She knows she's loved. That's all that matters. What about when she's older? Victoria's voice carried worry. When other children tease her about having 2 mothers and 2 fathers? When she realizes we're different, then we'll teach her that different isn't wrong. Sarah leaned against Marcus. That love is love, no matter what form it takes. That family is about choice, not convention. We'll tell her the truth, Thomas added, about the creek, about her grandfather, about how we all came together. She should know her story, Victoria agreed. The darkness and the light, the fear and the hope, all of it. Inside, Hope stirred in her sleep, making small sounds. Sarah started to rise, but Marcus caught her hand. I'll go. He found Hope sitting up in bed, her eyes wide. Bad dream? Dreamed I was alone. Hope's voice was small, in the dark, and nobody came. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed and pulled her into his lap. You're never alone. You have Mama Sarah and Mama Tori, Papa Thomas and me, Aunt Carmen and Uncle James. A whole community of people who love you. He rocked her gently. And even when you can't see us, we're there, in your heart, always. Tell me the story. Hope's voice was drowsy now, the nightmare fading. About the creek. Marcus hesitated. They decided to wait until she was older to share the full truth. But something in Hope's voice told him she needed it now. Needed to know where she came from to understand where she belonged. Once upon a time, he began softly. There was a brave cowboy who heard a tiny voice calling for help by a frozen creek. Hope settled against his chest, listening. The cowboy rode his horse as fast as he could, and there, caught in the water, he found a baby. You, me, Hope whispered. You, your lips were blue. You were so cold, but you held on. You fought. And when the cowboy pulled you out, you grabbed his finger and whispered one word, Mama. Hope's eyes were closing. That cowboy brought you to a kind teacher named Sarah, and together they saved you. They loved you, and when your first mama, Victoria, and your first papa, Thomas, found you again, they loved you too. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. You were supposed to die that day in the creek, but you survived, and you brought all of us together, made us a family. Hope was almost asleep, but she murmured one last question. Why did someone put me in the water? Because they were afraid, and fear makes people do terrible things. He kissed her forehead. But love is stronger than fear. Always. You proved that. Hope's breathing deepened into sleep. Marcus held her a moment longer, marveling at this child who'd saved them all without even knowing it. When he returned to the porch, the others looked at him with questions in their eyes. She asked for the story. The real one. Sarah's hand went to her mouth. What did you tell her? The truth. That she was thrown away. That we found her. That love brought us together. Marcus sat down heavily. She's going to have questions. Lots of them, as she gets older. Then we'll answer them. Victoria's voice was firm, honestly, with love, together. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the house, Hope dreamed of families and love and belonging, of being chosen over and over again. In the distance, coyotes called to each other across the valley. The creek burbled its eternal song. The mountains stood sentinel, unchanging and strong. And on the porch of a small ranch in the New Mexico territory, 4 people who'd been broken by loss and pain and betrayal held each other close and whispered their own prayers of gratitude. For second chances, for love that refused to quit, for a baby who'd whispered mama in a frozen creek and changed everything. 3 more years passed. Hope turned 8, then 9. She grew tall and confident, equally at home on horseback or with a book. She inherited Marcus's sense of justice and Sarah's love of learning, Victoria's determination and Thomas's gentleness. The homestead prospered. Their cattle herd grew. The crops yielded well. Dr. Mitchell's practice served a dozen families. Carmen's garden became legendary in the valley. Word of their unusual family spread. Some people were critical, calling it improper or sinful, but more people were curious. Other families, broken in their own ways, began to settle nearby. A widow with 3 children, an older couple who'd lost their son, a young man scarred from the war. The community they built didn't judge, didn't demand conformity, just offered acceptance and help to anyone who needed it. Hope was the bridge between them all. She moved effortlessly between families, bringing news and laughter, helping with harvests, reading to children too young for school. She absorbed the lesson her parents had taught without words, that family was infinite, that there was always room for one more at the table. On Hope's 10th birthday, a package arrived from Santa Fe. Inside was a letter from Federal Marshal Daniel Hutchinson. Dear Marcus, Sarah, Victoria, and Thomas, I hope this letter finds you and Hope well. I wanted to inform you that the corruption investigation stemming from William Ashford's arrest has concluded. Thanks to his ledger and the testimony of brave citizens like yourselves, we've cleaned up a significant amount of territorial corruption. But there's another reason I'm writing. I've compiled the story of how you came together, how you saved Hope and built your family. With your permission, I'd like to publish it in several Eastern newspapers. Not as scandal, but as an example of courage and unconventional love succeeding against powerful opposition. I believe your story could give hope to others who feel trapped by convention or crushed by loss. Would you allow me to share it? They debated for weeks. Privacy versus impact. Protection versus inspiration. In the end, Hope made the decision for them. If telling my story helps someone else feel less alone, then tell it. She was only 10, but her voice carried absolute certainty. That's what family does. We show up for each other, even strangers. So they agreed. 6 months later, Hope's story appeared in newspapers from New York to San Francisco. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from widows and widowers who'd lost hope of loving again, from children in orphanages dreaming of families, from people trapped in conventional lives who longed for something different. Some letters were critical, condemning the arrangement as immoral, but far more were grateful, inspired, transformed by the knowledge that family could be chosen, that love could triumph over fear. Hope read every letter. She insisted on responding to the ones from children, especially those who felt alone or different. Dear Emma, she wrote to a 9-year-old girl in Boston who'd been orphaned. I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong. I was almost thrown away before I even had a chance, but I survived. And I found people who chose to love me. You will too. Family isn't always the people you were born to. Sometimes it's the people who see you and decide, you're mine, I'm keeping you. Don't give up. Your family is out there looking for you even if they don't know it yet. Love always. Hope, the letters became Hope's ministry. She spent hours each week writing to lonely children, grieving parents, anyone who needed to hear that they weren't alone. And slowly the world began to change. Not dramatically, not overnight, but in small, incremental ways. A widow in Philadelphia adopted 3 children after reading Hope's story. A widower in Oregon remarried, creating a blended family. 2 couples in St. Louis, both grieving infant losses, came together to raise an abandoned baby they found. Hope's story, their story, rippled outward like stones thrown into still water. On Hope's 15th birthday, they gathered for a family portrait. A traveling photographer had set up in the nearest town, and they decided to commemorate the moment. All 6 of them, Marcus and Sarah, Victoria and Thomas, Carmen and Dr. Mitchell, stood together with Hope in the center. She was tall now, nearly as tall as Victoria. Her golden hair hung in a braid down her back. Her dark eyes sparkled with intelligence and kindness. The photographer positioned them carefully, but Hope broke the formal arrangement and pulling everyone closer, insisting they all touch. Hands on shoulders, arms around waists, connected. We're family, she explained to the confused photographer. We don't stand apart, we stand together. The resulting image was unconventional, informal, beautiful in its honest depiction of love that refused to follow rules. They hung the portrait above the fireplace in the main cabin, and every night Hope would look at it before bed, counting her blessings. Two mothers who'd each lost everything and found a reason to live again. Two fathers who'd survived death and separation to reunite. Two elders who'd chosen to join a family that didn't quite fit the mold. And her, a baby who'd been thrown away like garbage and found by a broken cowboy who couldn't let her go. Hope understood now what Marcus had told her years ago, that she hadn't just been saved, that in saving her, they'd saved each other. Love wasn't about possession or blood. It was about showing up, about refusing to quit, about choosing each other over and over again, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. On her 18th birthday, Hope stood by Miller's Creek, not the one in Texas where she'd been found, but the one near their ranch that Thomas had named in memorial. She'd ridden here alone, needing a moment to think. In 3 months, she'd be leaving for the Territorial College in Santa Fe. She'd been accepted to study law, dreaming of defending people who couldn't defend themselves, fighting for the powerless the way others had fought for her. But leaving meant leaving her family, the people who'd built their entire world around loving her. Hope knelt by the water's edge, trailing her fingers through the current. It was warmer than the creek in Texas had been that December day. Welcoming instead of deadly. I thought I'd find you here. Sarah's voice came from behind her. Hope turned to see all four of her parents approaching. They must have followed her, knowing she needed them even if she'd tried to go alone. I'm scared, Hope admitted, of leaving, of being away from all of you. We're scared too. Marcus sat down beside her, but fear isn't a reason not to do something. Sometimes it's a sign you're doing exactly what you should. You gave us so much. Victoria knelt on Hope's other side. A reason to fight, to serve, to build something beautiful from ashes. Now it's time for you to go out and give that gift to others. You'll come back. Thomas's voice was certain. Between terms, after graduation. This will always be home, always, Sarah added. But Hope, the world needs what you have. That fierce love, that refusal to give up on people, that certainty that family is choice, not obligation. Hope looked at the four people who'd made her who she was. Tell me the story one more time, about the creek, about how we found each other. They sat together by the water as the sun set, and Marcus began the familiar tale. Once upon a time, there was a cowboy who'd lost everything. He thought his life was over, that he'd never feel anything again. But then he heard a whisper. Sarah continued, a tiny voice calling for help in the frozen water. He pulled out a baby who should have died. Victoria's voice was soft, but she held on. She fought. She whispered, Mama, and broke through walls 8 years thick. That baby brought people together who never should have met. Thomas finished. A Texas Ranger and a school teacher. A young mother and the man she loved. All of them broken. All of them lost. But together they became something whole. They saved each other. Hope completed the story the way it always ended. Because that's what love does. It doesn't give up. It doesn't quit. It holds on even when everything says to let go. She looked at her parents, all four of them, and felt her fear transform into excitement. I'm ready to leave, to study, to bring what you taught me to the world. Her voice strengthened. And when I come back, because I will come back, I'm bringing more people with me, more families who need what we have, more children who need to hear that they're worth fighting for. That's my daughter. Marcus pulled her into his arms. Both of my daughters. He looked at Sarah and Victoria. All my children. He included Thomas in his gaze. This crazy, beautiful family we built. They sat by the creek until stars emerged, holding each other, telling stories, laughing and crying and being grateful for every moment that had led them here, because none of them had planned this. None of them had imagined that a baby thrown away in a Texas creek would become the center of a family that defied convention and proved love was stronger than fear. But that's exactly what had happened. And as Hope looked at the faces surrounding her, Weathered by time but still fierce with love, she understood the greatest truth of all. We didn't just save her. Marcus had said it years ago, but now Hope felt the full weight of the words. She saved us. All of us. Every single one. Hope smiled through her tears. No, we saved each other. That's what family means. The stars wheeled overhead, the creek sang its eternal song, and somewhere in the darkness, the echo of a baby's whisper, Mama, still hung in the air. A reminder that even the smallest voice can change the world, that love always finds a way, and that family isn't about blood or law or convention. It's about the people who refuse to let you go.